Cucka, doo-doo, pee-pee, poo-poo, wee-wee. I'm trying to fart. I'm trying to trigger the algorithm. Oh no, I'll get demonetized for saying bad words in the first 15 seconds of my video. Oh no. Pika, what did you write this in your show notes? You know I read everything that you write down. See, Pika makes show notes. Pika makes show notes, all right? So it's wait a second. These aren't show notes. Pika. Hey there. Welcome back. Once again, it is time for the golden age of DC Comics. 365 days. The January redo. Welcome back. Thank you so very much for tuning in today. We are taking this hardcover coffee table book given to us about 2 decades ago by one of our best friends. It's been surfing our coffee table ever since, providing us with a constant source of comic book shop style conversations. The kind we intend to recreate right here, right now, in this conversation that we've been having for over a year. Daily at 3 p.m. U.S. Eastern, we leave behind the world's problems just for a few moments in a day. And we embrace the escapism that binds us all together in this wonderful niche hobby known as the superhero comic book. Indeed, I use this hardcover coffee table book, this 2004 Abrams publication, written and curated by Les Daniels and Chip Kidd, photographed by Geoff Spear. You can find the link to its Amazon page in the description if you'd like to get your own copy. It'll look great on your coffee table. You can play along at home, and it makes a great gift for a geek. I know. We take this 365 days book for its intended purpose. We're going to open up to today's date, which is January the 5th. We're going to look at some comic book art of an antediluvian age. We're going to read the blurb, and then we're going to talk about comic books. And we're going to talk about comic books, you guessed it, every day for the rest of the year. That's right. How are you doing today? I hope that you are crushing your problems and your challenges and not being crushed by them. Seriously. I mean that because that's a logic and a wisdom that I figured out myself, you know? And it's just being a chef. You got to run the day or the day could run you. This is true. What am I doing here with this show? What are we doing here today with our show? Okay, I'm revisiting the month of January in this great book of ours that has given us so many comic book shop style conversations that I thought revisiting January was worth it because, you know, the channel was just starting out. The show was definitely just beginning. It took us a little while to find our feet, to find our format, to curate this audience and conversation that we're having. And so on this day, 1 year ago, I made a 6-minute, 39-second long video that got 10 views. Yes, and I think that we can just do a lot better at this point. We're going to open up to today's date. Let's look at some comic book art of an antediluvian age. It is January the 5th. Just to remind you that the golden age of comic books runs from 1938 with the first appearance of Superman in Action Comics #1 and runs until 1955. The Silver Age begins in 1956 and runs until 1970. The Bronze Age, I'm a Bronze Age baby myself, runs from 1970 to 1984. The Copper Age begins in 1984, and I get these standards of the ages from the glossary of the Overstreet Comic Book Price Guide. Exactly. And this too, as well, you can find a link in the description to its Amazon page. This is actually a really handy reference for any comic book fan. Seriously. So what's going on today? Let's do it. Let's open up the book and figure it out. It's our old friend, the Big Red Cheese. It's art by C.C. Beck from the cover of Captain Marvel Adventures #8. Issue #8, rather. And it's from March 6th of 1942. And this is, yeah, that's from the cover. 10-cent cover price of a Fawcett comic book. And here we go. We've got Captain Marvel leading our armed forces into battle. World War II has come to the United States. And so the United States will come to World War II. And we will send our heroes, fictional and in real life. Let's read the blurb. Perhaps the most affable of superheroes, Captain Marvel purportedly had the wisdom of Solomon, but he often came off as a bit of a buffoon. Even his fans follow the example of his worst enemy, mad scientist Savannah, affectionately referring to the world's mightiest mortal as the Big Red Cheese. The wildest schemes of each issue's lunatics left him unperturbed, but on this cover, he's fighting mad. Prepared just after the attack on Pearl Harbor, December 7th, 1941, this drawing symbolically depicts America's mood, but also inadvertently makes another point. The troops really did follow superheroes like Captain Marvel and Superman, thus accounting for a huge surge in comic book sales during World War II. Let's look at that art once again. Yeah, that's could be propaganda. Could be. I mean, I'm listening. I'm up for conversations about that. Do I think it's propaganda? I don't know. It was just a lot different then. World at war. We didn't have this whole concept of the anti-hero or weak heroes balanced with, gray area. There was fiction, because that was called real life when you had moral ambiguity. And fiction is where you can actually find totally good and totally evil archetypes. I mean, real humanity runs the gamut in between. And, so continuing to make things, heroes, anti-heroes, and reformed villains as some chaotic good, it's without consequences for their horrendous actions. I like this more idealized golden age where you had good guys and you had bad guys. And guess what? Good guys winning over bad guys. Good triumphing over relative evil or evil unspeakable acts, or the unintended consequence of a mad scientist who lacks empathy. That's a lot of like old Super Friends from the 1970s. I grew up on this, and I grew up on Captain Marvel. Like I said, I love using an excuse to show Mary Marvel, twin sister to Billy Batson. So if she says the magic word, she's granted the power of Captain Marvel as well. This is true. So she says Shazam, and since she's Billy's twin sister, she is granted all the power that comes with that magic word, Shazam. That's right. This is... Ain't that cute? My buddy Dell gave that to me. But yeah, I love showing off Mary Marvel. This is a Kotobukiya Bushoujo. Shoujo is a Japanese word for girl. Yes. And but let's read the wiki just a little bit. Captain Marvel, also known as Shazam, is a superhero appearing in American comic books, originally published by Fawcett Comics and currently published by DC Comics. Artist C.C. Beck and writer Bill Parker created the character in 1939. Captain Marvel first appeared in Whiz Comics number 2, cover dated February 1940, published by Fawcett Comics. He's the alter ego of young Billy Batson, a boy who, by speaking the magic word Shazam, acronym of 6 immortal elders, Solomon, Hercules, Atlas, Zeus, Achilles, and Mercury, can transform himself into a costumed adult with the powers of superhuman strength, speed, flight, and other abilities. Based on comic book sales, Captain Marvel was the most popular superhero of the 1940s, even outselling Superman. Captain Marvel was also the first comic book superhero to be adapted to film. In a 1941 Republic Pictures serial, The Adventures of Captain Marvel, with Tom Tyler as Captain Marvel and Frank Coquelin Jr. as Billy Batson. And here's the sad news is Fawcett ceased publishing Captain Marvel-related comics in 1953, partly because of a copyright infringement suit from DC Comics, alleging that Captain Marvel was a copy of Superman. And the National Comics Publication versus Fawcett Comics, put Fawcett into the poorhouse, and they had to, close down their operations. In their publishing operations, they held on to their properties, for as long as they can. In 1972, Fawcett licensed the character rights to DC, which by 1991, DC acquired all the rights to the entire family of characters. DC Comics has since integrated Captain Marvel and the Marvel family into their DC universe and has attempted to revive the property several times with mixed success. Owing to a trademark conflicts over other characters named Captain Marvel, owned by Marvel Comics, DC has rebranded and marketed the character using the trademark Shazam since his 1972 reintroduction. This led many to assume that Shazam was the character's name. DC renamed the mainline version of the character Shazam when relaunching its comic book properties in 2011 in the New 52. And his associates became the Shazam family at this time as well. I grew up with the live-action 1970s TV series. There were 2 cartoons. There was like one with in the late 70s, and again another one with Captain Marvel in a high school of young unknown superheroes. Then they had like music and variety show, kind of like live-action music like cut into it too. It was just a really interesting show. That was in the early 80s. And more people might know him today with the Zachary Levi character and the whole DCU, DC cinematic universe, or DCEU they call it, the extended universe. Terrible name. But in 2019 there was a Shazam movie in Europe. You might have seen that. There's a sequel coming later on this year. I saw the Black Adam movie. Now, Black Adam is the opposite of Captain Marvel. Black Adam is is a character that the wizard Shazam gave the same power to thousands of years before, but the power went to his head. Yeah. And but also I wanted to talk about Miracle Man / Marvel Man. Have you heard? Do you know who is Marvel Man and Miracle Man? They're the same person, but this is about the end of the Golden Age, a kind of Silver Age, but also then here comes one of the first modern dark gritty reboots of the early 1980s, giving us also and introducing us to this this British Revolution of artists, of writers and artists. Britain had their own comic book lines, specifically Warrior Comics, which was it was only lasted 26 issues in the early 1980s, but its impact, we still feel it today. They published the 80s version of Marvel Man, Miracle Man, and V for Vendetta, both written by Alan Moore. You might have heard of him. 2000 AD is probably the bigger British publication that has Judge Dredd, and then there was also British Marvel. I mean, who had Action Forces? Action Forces is British G.I. Joe. There was a Transformers comic book that had its own continuity. I got to see these British comic books at we used to have a Tower Records here in Boston, and on the first floor they had international publications with their newsstand. You can get, European music magazines and the such, and you could also find these British comic books. And so, who is Marvel Man, though, and what does he have to do with the big red cheese? Well, I'm going to tell you about it.
I found this on the web.
Thank you so very much, Siri. I mean, she's listening to us. So is Pika. So you got to get used to it. In the 1950s, a small British publisher, L. Miller and Sons, published a number of black and white reprints of American comic books, including the Captain Marvel series. With the outcome of National Publications versus Fawcett lawsuit, L. Miller and Son found their supply of Captain Marvel material abruptly cut off. They requested the help of a British comic writer, Mick Anglo, who created a thinly disguised version of the superhero called Marvel Man. Captain Marvel Jr. was adapted to create young Marvel Man, while Mary Marvel probably was the first gender swap, while Mary Marvel had her sex changed to create the male kid Marvel Man. The magic word Shazam was replaced with Kimota, which is atomic, spelled backwards. The new characters took over the numberings of the original Captain Marvel UK series with issue number 25, but Marvel Man ceased publication in 1963. 20 years later, though, the character was revived in 1982 by writer Alan Moore in the pages of Warrior magazine. Beginning in 1985, Moore's black and white serialized adventures were reprinted in color by Eclipse Comics. Eclipse Comics, who are they, huh? Was an American comic book publisher, one of several independent publishers during the 1980s and 1990s. I remember them. There was Eclipse Comics, there was Comico, Dark Horse Comics was just coming on the scene. There were just so many. There were a lot of little independent publications that you could see at the direct market, aka your local comic book shop. You wouldn't see these comic books. I don't think I've ever seen any of these comic books at a spinner rack or on a newsstand, but I've most definitely seen all of these comic books at my local comic book shops in the early to mid 80s too. But Moore's black and white serialized adventures were reprinted in color by Eclipse Comics under the new title Miracle Man, as Marvel Comics objected to the use of Marvel in the title and continued publication in the U.S. after Warrior's demise in 1985. Within the metatextual storyline of the comic series itself, it was noted that Marvel Man's creation was based upon Captain Marvel comics, both by Moore and later writer Neil Gaiman. You'd know him from Sandman. Neil Gaiman took over from Alan Moore in the mid to late 70s on Miracle Man. Coming full circle to this. I bought this late last year. This is Marvel Comics. Bought the right now, mirroring Fawcett versus National Publications. There were some huge legal wranglings and ownerships, like Todd McFarlane, the creator of Spawn, owner of McFarlane Toys, bought Eclipse Comics and its properties in the early 2000s. So he thought he had the exclusive rights to Marvel Man, Miracle Man. He didn't. Apparently, the creator, British, now he's an old man, Mick Anglo, had his rights, and he sold those rights to Marvel Comics in the early 2000s. And Marvel obtained the rights to the original 1950s Marvelman characters and stories, and later purchased the rights to the 1980s versions and those reprints in 2013. So Marvel Comics has been trying to make a Miracle Man comic ever since. They've tried a few times and failed, but I mean, they're doing it again right now. And this was a really nice anthology book. I didn't want to buy a Marvel comic book, and as He's just going to a bag, you know. But the corner's already dinged up. You can see that. We have to, come on. Yeah. And this is a variant cover by Scotty Young. Scotty Young's known for his kid like stuff, and he's a really good artist. But this actually is a really interesting anthology. It's an issue number 0. And you know we love talking about issues number 0 here in this station. It's a primer. It's meant to be a jump on spot for a new reader. This is supposed to be leading into a new ongoing title called Marvel Man: The Silver Age, written by Neil Gaiman, finishing scripts and stories that he started writing all those many years ago. Finally, coming to print and fruition. Will I continue to buy it? I don't think so. I mean, I like Neil Gaiman just fine. He's I'm really enjoying his Sandman audiobooks. I'm avoiding the Netflix show. I don't watch Netflix or Hulu. That's just my thing. But yes, Miracle Man, Marvel Man, this was definitely a pastiche, a ripoff of Captain Marvel. Who is Miracle Man? He was Mickey Moran. And he was, let's see, the Alan Moore years. Let's see, no, that's too far up. Marvel Man was similar to Captain Marvel. A young reporter named Mickey Moran encounters an astrophysicist instead of a wizard who gives him superpowers based on atomic energy instead of magic. To transform into Marvel Man, he speaks the word Kimota, which is phonetically atomic backwards, rather than Shazam. And instead of Captain Marvel Jr. and Mary Marvel, Marvel Man was joined by Dickie Dauntless, a teenage messenger boy who became young Marvel Man, and young Johnny Bates, who became Kid Marvel Man. Both of their magic words were Marvel Man. But in the 80s, when Alan Moore came back to do that reboot, he made it dark, violent, apocalyptic, very layered, very savage, very heartbreaking. There was just there was we talk about themes in comics such as abuse and trauma, and how superheroes usually have stories rooted in these, and how we use these stories as metaphors and allegory to help us with our own, issues of in real life trauma, and coming to cope and coming to gain resilience. I think that, but that was a part and parcel, a big thing of those early 80s, because from Alan Moore, he went on to do Watchmen. And then Frank Miller also did The Dark Knight Returns, where you have deconstruction of superheroes given neuroses, superheroes becoming grim in darker worlds which are, very violent and unsure. Maybe it was the zeitgeist. Maybe it was the sign of the times, dealing with, I can tell you by growing up in that era, we were always thinking that we were just, a politician's choice away from a full-on nuclear war. And maybe a lot of these things were power fantasies on how to be stronger than the atom bomb, or how to cope in this changing world, in a changing, because we're leaving the 20th century and going into the 21st century. And you can check out Miracle Man on Marvel Comics. You can get it used as well, or you can try to pick up those Alan Moore stories. Are horrific and harrowing, I'm telling you. Are they worth it? I'm not sure. Sure, it's hard to say been there, done that when it comes to the nihilism of Alan Moore, but this is where it started. It didn't start in Watchmen. Watchmen was kind of the accumulation of that. I think Alan Moore's nihilism what we perceive as nihilism. Because remember, Alan Moore also gave us Tom Strong, ABC Comics, and the 1963 series on Image Comics, which are just very hopeful and very wonderful celebrations of comic books. Alan Moore is such a really good comic book writer. Thank you, Alan Moore. All right. Well, we've been talking about comic books, and we're going to talk about comic books every day for the rest of the year. So tune in tomorrow, 3 p.m. U.S. Eastern, and we'll find out who we're talking about when we turn the page tomorrow. Please like and subscribe. I would love to earn your subscription. We make daily content here. We talk about comic books. Comic books! Every day, 3 p.m. U.S. Eastern. Put on those notifications. Eventually, you will learn how to tell time. Hey, it must be 3 p.m. in Boston. The show's on. Let's tune in. I love seeing you guys in the live chat and in your comments. Keep them coming. If I can make the live chat, I will. And I enjoy continuing this conversation that we have daily about comic books. Isn't it wonderful? I'm loving it. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Like and subscribe. God bless. Namaste. Good luck. And we will see you again tomorrow in those funny pages. Ciao. Bye-bye.